Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I must still be in a bit of the Halloween spirit because as I reflected on this week's Torah portion, Lech, I realized that this parsha is perhaps the scariest portion in the whole of Torah. Yes, we have other portions that include horrible things like death, destruction, sprinkling blood, plagues, slavery, and most notably, the invention of matzah. But in Parshat Lech, God tells Avram, go forth, go away from your land, from your birthplace, and from your family's house. I will make you into a great nation. You shall be a blessing. In other words, leave everything you thought you knew and be different. In a world where everyone around you is telling you to do one thing, leave and go do your thing for the promise of a better world. And yet, while this must have been incredibly scary for Avram and his family, the Torah does not mention their fear. They go forward with the faith that they are creating their own destiny for themselves and for their future generations. Of course, we all know that the descendants of Abraham and Sarah did not just live happily ever after. Our story has been marked time and again by expressions of hatred towards Jews because they exist and because we are different. According to the ADL, anti-Semitism refers to prejudice and or discrimination against Jews as individuals and as a group. Anti-Semitism is based on stereotypes and myths that target Jews as a people, their religious practices and beliefs, and the Jewish state of Israel. Historically, what began as a conflict over religious beliefs evolved into a systematic policy of political, economic, and social isolation, exclusion, degradation, and attempted annihilation. It did not begin in the Nazi era, nor did it end with the close of World War II. Its continuance over the millennia speaks to the power of scapegoating a group that is defined as other. The term anti-Semitism was actually coined in 1873 by Wilhelm Marr, a German political agitator in his work, Victory of Judaism over Germanism. In this text, Marr rails against what he sees as a war between Jews and Germans, noting that there has been a war between Jews and Germans for 1,800 years, and Jews have come out victorious, controlling thought and the press, amongst other levers of culture. Marr also casts doubt that Jews could assimilate and become Germans since they are involved in an everlasting war. Marr does not yet consider Jews a race, but he does identify the Jews as different. Today, we are familiar with the history of how that ideology continued throughout Germany and the rest of the world, with far-right political parties calling on and implementing the baseless murder of Jews. But this did not stop after the Holocaust and the end of World War II. Even last month, the ADL's tracker of anti-Semitic incidents, which A, unfortunately exists, and B, is their compilation of recent cases of alleged anti-Jewish vandalism, harassment, and assault reported to or detected by the ADL, counted 50 incidents of anti-Semitism in America. 50 incidents in just the last month. Everything from swastikas spray painted on a garage in Connecticut to the Goyim Defense League displaying a banner on a freeway overpass in Los Angeles that read, "Kanye was right about the Jews," while giving Nazi salutes. In the past few weeks, two high-profile celebrities, Kanye West and Kyrie Irving, have given voice to an anti-Semitic trope that claims black people are Jews and Semites and therefore cannot be anti-Semitic. This is not a reference to the religion of Judaism or traditional understandings of Jewish ethnicity, but rather a belief found in black Hebrew Israelite ideology that asserts that certain people of color are the true descendants of the biblical Israelites. Extremists use this concept to promote anti-Semitism, claiming that Jewish people today are imposters who stole the religious heritage of black people and are engaged in a global conspiracy to oppress non-Jewish people. I'm sure there are even some in this sanctuary who might disagree. This is, in short, a form of cultural erasure. The argument that anti-Semitism, a term used to describe hatred toward Jews, does not actually apply to Jews because people who call themselves Jews are not really Jews. And we're only 27 years removed from similar kinds of threats, where the call was coming from inside the proverbial house. In 1995, rallies organized by right-wing and other allied parties featured depictions of the Prime Minister of Israel in a Nazi SS uniform, in the crosshairs of a gun, called him a murderer, a traitor, and one opposition party leader led a mock funeral procession featuring a coffin and a hangman's noose at a rally where protesters chanted for the death of the Prime Minister. When the chief of internal security alerted this political leader of a plot to kill the Prime Minister and asked him to moderate the protesters' rhetoric, this leader declined to do so. But unfortunately, we know what happened next. Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. And that opposition party leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, was elected prime minister just a year later, and with the exception of a 10-year span, has been prime minister ever since. During his time in office, amongst other policies, Bibi has been reticent to acknowledge and embrace the mere fact that Jews practice Judaism differently across the world. Reform Jews are often seen as less than, or worse, not authentic Jews. Rabbi Navarez, Rabbi Bernstein, and myself, as Reform rabbis, even have to disclose to those who choose Judaism with us that there is a slight chance that the Israeli government may not accept their conversion through us. Fortunately, we have not had reports of our converts having issues in making Aliyah in recent years, but the potential has existed in the past. On a trip to Israel a few years ago, I had the opportunity to visit Israel's National Archives. The building is rather nondescript. It's very nondescript, and it's not on many tours, but the artifacts it contains are extraordinary. I reviewed the letters Eichmann wrote from his prison cell. I thumbed through the Egypt Peace Accord, in all three languages, of course. And I held the Beretta 84F semi-automatic pistol that shot Yitzhak Rabin. As my hand wrapped around it, I immediately thought of a similar motion I make every week when we mark Havdalah, the sacred separation between Shabbat and the rest of the week. While we usually reflect on the separation of lights reflected in our fingernails and the darkness created as we cup our hands, I realized that as we make that gesture, it is also a weekly reminder that the choice to add darkness or light to our world is within the power of each one of our hands. We don't know what the next chapter of anti-Semitism will look like. And we don't know how it will affect us, directly or indirectly. Similarly, Avram didn't know his future. He put his faith in God and family to create a better future. Fortunately, there are 150 educators in this sanctuary who are helping make this world a better place, one child at a time. Being different is scary. But as we've learned from the previous week's Torah portions, diversity is embedded in God's creation of the world. This Shabbat, go forth, teach your children, be you, fearlessly. Shabbat Shalom.